Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament. We are still in the book of Acts, looking at the early church, and we're currently in the first missionary journey of Paul, which included Barnabas as well. And today we are looking at Paul and Barnabas in Iconium, and this comes from Acts 14 verses 1 through 7, and we'll reread this one real quick. It says the same thing happened in Iconium. The same thing meaning they were they were run out of the town. Paul and Barnabas went to the Jewish synagogue and preached with such power that a great number of both Jews and Greeks became believers. Some of the Jews, however, spurned God's message and poisoned the mind of the Gentiles against Paul and Barnabas. But the apostles stayed there a long time, preaching boldly about the grace of the Lord, and the Lord proved their message was true by giving them power to do miracles, miraculous signs and wonders. But the people of the town were divided in opinion about them. Some sided with the Jews, some sided with the apostles. Then a mob of Gentiles and Jews, along with their leaders, decided to attack and stone them. When the apostles learned of it, they fled to the region of Iconia, to the town of Lystra, and Debre, and the surrounding area, and there they preached the good news. And so we see this continual. We're going to see this continual theme of them coming to preach and then them being run off, and it's going to get worse from here as we see this. But they moved to the next town and started doing to do their same thing that they typically do. And this location was a favorable location because again it was on several key trade routes. And so Paul and Barnabas here are doing a logical thing in following the trade routes, following the major hubs, the major cities to where they would have the best opportunity to reach the most people with spreading the message. And so in their usual fashion, the way they usually did this, they began their ministry by speaking powerfully in the Jewish synagogue, which led to a great response from both Jews and Greeks. And so they would they would do this and have this pattern of trying to reach people through doing this. And again, Paul and Barnabas said they faced hostile Jews who rejected the Christian message, and then they poisoned the mind of the Gentiles. And so everywhere they went, they had these Jewish people who would team up against them, and their motive was all that they couldn't refute what Paul was, especially Paul, was teaching. And so their go-to was, oh well, we're just going to kill him. It's just not a very godlike message, but that was what they went to. And so one of the things that we see here is that Paul and Barnabas are referred to as apostles. And I'm throwing this in here as a little bit of a deeper dive into this and just kind of give an understanding. And so both Paul and Barnabas are referred to as apostles. But if you actually study, we see that apostles, the 12 apostles, were people who, there were some certain criteria they had to reach, meaning, and one of them being with Christ. And so the word here there's different meanings of the word, kind of like we have the same word for different meaning for the same word in the English language. We see this a little bit in the Greek, and it carries the general meaning of one who is sent, right? An apostle is one who is sent. So in general, I mean, they are apostles because they were sent to go on this first missionary journey. But it's often used throughout the New Testament in a more technical term for someone specifically chosen and commissioned by Christ, right, for the proclamation of the gospel, and as in the case of the original 12 apostles. And so there's a lot of researchers and commentators differ as to whether the word apostle here refers to Paul and Barnabas as being apostles in the same technical sense as the original 12, or whether it's intended in the general sense of one who are sent. I lean towards just my research, my looking into it. You can look this up on your own if you want to. My general research, it's the general usage, right? You have the 12 apostles. Now, we know later on that Paul is considered an apostle of Christ, and he kind of does meet some of the criteria in that he had spent time with, a few times. He had seen Jesus, been with Jesus, and that kind of stuff. And so he technically kind of probably fits into that more than Barnabas does. But I think in this case, where they refer to hey, Paul and Barnabas, apostles for Christ, is simple. These are people who are sent for Christ to spread the message. I don't think it lumps them, especially Barnabas, in the same as the 12. And so just kind of some filler information, deep dive, because I know sometimes there's questions around that and around whether we should call people apostles today and stuff like that. I think technically we shouldn't. That's just where I lean. I think, those who qualified as apostles, and the term apostle, you know, there was a special category for some special people at a special time. I don't believe we as Christians fit into the apostle term that we see there today. Now, if you want to say, hey, in the sense of someone, he's an apostle as in someone who's sent to spread the message, like, like missionaries, and they maybe, technically get to do that. But again, that's just one of those areas that I thought I'd throw this in there, and something that, well, I thought we would look at there a little bit. And so again, just a little, a deep knowledge, or a little bit of head knowledge maybe as to on the different terms for apostle, especially with the Greek. And so what we have here with this, moving on from that, the Spirit inspired the apostles to be resilient, right? To withstand the verbal attacks that are coming against them, to guard up against these attacks that are coming at them. And they persisted in preaching the good news that God's grace was available to the Gentiles and the Jews, as well as to the Jews. And in addition to that, so not only were they given this message, they confirmed that Christian message, with the miraculous signs and wonders that they were able to perform in front of these people too, to further prove their message and who they are. And so, but they were run out of town. Again, they got enough people turned against them that they were run out of town. And so they moved on to Lystra, I think it's Derbe is how you say it, and Iconium. They moved from Iconium to these other two cities, and which is in the region that was known as Galatia. And so more than likely, the letter Galatians that we're going to study later on was written to these churches, these three churches, if not, the other churches that may have been established in this region. And the reason we're going to see that Galatia was, or the book of Galatians was written by Paul to these people, a lot of it was because the Jewish Christians at that time were telling and claiming that the non-Jewish Christians couldn't be saved unless they followed the Jewish laws and customs. And Paul has a really, really strong response to that. We're going to look at that later on. And so he refuted that and kind of brought them back under the right understanding that we have there. So again, we see Paul and Barnabas run out of another town. Tomorrow, we're going to see them in the two other towns that are mentioned here as they go on. As always, I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to listen to these. I hope you are getting an understanding, a deeper dive, a deeper understanding of the Word, the missions, what we saw in Acts, and the spreading of the Word, and what the New Testament church kind of looked like as it was being established and grew. So, as always, I appreciate everyone who takes the time to listen to these, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day.